Welcome to my three thought video. Today I thought I'd do a little longer version, push towards 8 minutes long. I'm reading in Numbers and Psalms and in the book of Luke. In the book of Numbers, there's a instruction by God to Moses and Aaron to form some trumpets, two different trumpets that they'll sound at different times to call the congregations together, to call the leaders, to send out um, the camp when they're moving out, and then also to call to war. And then finally, there's instruction that when it's time to celebrate a feast or a new moon, they're supposed to call the people. It says, also at your times of rejoicing, your appointed feasts and new moon festivals, you're to sound the trumpet. And my thought about that is that these feasts were really a time to slow down, to rejoice, to eat and celebrate, and to enjoy one another and to enjoy God. And the thought that came to mind is that we often also need a a a call to slow, a call to rejoice, a call to stop the work. We live in a society of busyness and effort and work and nonstop, going and coming. And here it says the leadership needs to sound the alarm. Everybody stop working. We're going to rejoice. We're going to celebrate. We're going to eat and we're going to drink and we're going to have these times where we remember what God has done, where we pay attention to one another, our family. Also, I thought that it was really interesting that there was this unity of it, right? A single blast is sounded and the entire nation comes. There is a unity of relax and a unity of celebrate, a unity of worship that we're called to. We're not called just to celebrate alone, but we're called into this union of fellowship, not just worship, right? Not just going to God, but also eating together and celebrating together, drinking together, enjoying the life that we have, enjoying a good harvest, enjoying, good weather, enjoying God's faithfulness and goodness, and remembering the great things that He has done. Then in the book of Psalms, there's this this verse that says, "O sovereign Lord," it's in chapter 140, verse 7. "O sovereign Lord, my strong deliverer, who shields my head in the day of battle." And my initial thought was that God is our helmet, right? He's protecting our head, most valuable part on our body, really, and the only part that if gets damaged too severely, we can't really live. But then I started to think, in the most difficult days, God wants to give us courage. He wants to protect us from the lies. He wants to protect us from those thoughts of discouragement. And the thing that came to mind was, and I was talking about just the other day when my wife Linda, got sick, and she actually died and came back from the dead. And there was 5, 6, 8 days where we just didn't know whether she would, come around, whether she would live again, and I was faced with the idea that I might live life alone without her. And it was in these times where I really, really felt God protect me from serious dread and depression and discouragement and fear and anxiety, that I really felt His comfort, and that I felt like there was really a hedge around these feelings, these emotions, these fears. I still did feel them, but I definitely felt God give me courage, and God give me faith, and God give me wisdom, and God give me direction, that God is going to shield our minds in those most difficult days where there's death on every side, right? Where it's life or death. God wants to be the shield of our head, right? Our helmet. Um, to protect us from lies and fears and discouragement and anxiety. These most dangerous things, God wants to give you faith and peace and wisdom and grace and courage and boldness and all these things. When things get really, really dire, it's time to turn towards God and His grace and mercy. And then lastly, it's Luke chapter 15, the story of the prodigal son. Obviously, it's a great story about a young man who realizes his dad is very wealthy, says he wants all the money, takes half the value of his father's estate and liquidates it, and then goes and lives crazy. We're told that he's had prostitutes and he's drinking and partying, and pretty soon all the money is gone. And there's a famine in the land, and he ends up pig farming, right? And at some point, he's so hungry that he actually looks at the food that the pigs are eating and wishes he could eat that, but he's not allowed to. And then this verse says in chapter 15, when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am starving to death." And that line, he came to his senses, sort of spoke to me, right? In our lives, not only pre Jesus, right? Not only before Christ have I come to my senses, but since then, many times I would say that within my faith, I've come to my senses and realized that God has a better way. When I walk away from this rule that God wants to have, this rightful rule in my life, God wants to be the father that protects me from my bad decisions. I'm always free to walk away. But then when I do, I can still come to my senses, and it's never ever too late to come to our senses and realize that there is a much better way. And then he says to himself, right? He says to himself, there's a better way, right? Back at my father's house, the hired men are treated better than I am. I'll go to my father. And then he says to himself, I'll say to my dad, I'm not worthy to be your son. I can be just a hired man. I know that I've done you great harm. And he goes back. He turns from where he is and he goes back to his father. Obviously, the story goes on that when he gets there, his father wraps his arms around him, sends for the fatted calf to have a party and to celebrate and rejoice that the son was dead, but now he's alive. But this idea of coming to our senses, this idea that we might have a revelation or a realization, an understanding that the way that we're going is not the way that God wants us to go. Again, coaching the red line, my business, my practice of spiritual direction and life coaching, maybe you're in a situation where you realize that the direction that you're going, the life that you're living, um, it could be better. And it's time to have a come to your senses moment and begin to have a conversation about what would it look like to go back towards God. Be a great conversation to have with a spiritual director. Or maybe you just come to your senses and realize it's time to make some changes with finances, with business, with work, with family and relationships, whatever it is. It'd be a great conversation. Again, my name's Alec Gonzalez with Coaching the Red Line. You can reach me on the internet or give me a call or send a note to the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel and like the video. It helps with building the algorithm and all that kind of junk. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.